All. This is Dr. Mubin Sayed from drbeen.com. Welcome to one more show. So, the discussion today is about a new study from the Rush University Medical Center, Chicago. The study is about the flavonoids and a specific subtype of flavonoids called flavonol or flavonol, and its effect on delaying or slowing down the rate of cognitive decline in Chicago individuals 961. It's a beautiful study. And let's look at the study. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a summary first. And the most important takeaway, there is an action item in here that we can all add that change in our life. So I'm going to put that in front of you first, and then we'll look at the study in detail as well. So these, out of all the lists, my favorite were these three: olive oil, tea, and kale. Of course, as I show you the list, you may have a different set of products that you would like. So let's look at the study first. So this is drbeen.com for the Thanksgiving and the Cyber Monday and the holidays. There is a link in the description for one-time fee of $67 to get 900 videos access on drbeen.com. These videos are in addition to the videos on YouTube. Okay, so with this, here is the study. Association of dietary intake of flavonols. So remember here, it is a O, flavonol. There is another subcategory of flavonoids called flavonols. So there is a difference there. For example, chocolate contains flavonols, while fruits and vegetables, many of them have flavonols. So with changes in global cognition and several cognitive abilities. This is a study. Then in the description, there are various links that show various definitions of the medical terms that we will use, a couple of articles as well. I will explain them as we discuss these over here. So once again, my favorite were these three. Now let's look at the study. So look at this, November 22, 2022. So really um, recent study. And just for the, in honor of the researchers, so Tom Monroe Holland, Rush Institute for Healthy Aging, Rush University Medical Center, Chicago, Illinois, Department of Clinical Nutrition, Rush University Medical Center. Then Pooja Agarwal, same university, and so on. So thank you to the researchers. Here is what they found. So summary coming your way. Here is what they found. They found that those individuals that have a regular intake of flavonols in their food, they have a slower decline of cognitive abilities over multiple years. This study was 6.9 years or 7 years long. And what they found was people who were using flavonol, they were the ones who were using more flavonol compared to those who were using less flavonol, and I'll discuss the amount. They had 0.4 units per decade slower rate of decline. And so you could say, what does that mean? 0.4 units per. So what they did was they had a test devised which included 19 various tests for memory, cognition, thinking, understanding, recall, etc. And they gave an overall score. And the average score for passing the test for a healthy patient or person, I shouldn't say patient, who has no cognitive issues was 0.5. And as people progressed through time, that score reduced. So if someone was using flavonols regularly in their food, Then over 10 years, the reduction was slower, 0.4 units per decade slower than those who were using less flavonols. What does this mean? Those who were eating fruits and vegetables had a slower rate of cognitive decline compared to those who were eating less fruits and vegetables. So this will become clear as we move forward. The other thing they found was there were two specific flavonols that were, so they were observing four, but out of these four, two were more impactful. And these two were camphorals and quercetins. And what they did was they compared those who took more camphorals compared to those who took less camphorals. And similarly, those who took more quercetin or foods and fruits that had quercetin compared to those who had less quercetin. And what they found was those who took more camphoral, their rate of cognitive decline was 0.4 units per decade lesser or slower than those who took less camphorals. And now again, there would be a question in your mind, what are the things which have camphorals? And I'll show you the list in a second. Those who were using quercetin, more quercetin compared to those who used less quercetin. More quercetin users had 0.2 units per decade slower rate of decline for cognitive abilities compared to those who used less quercetin. So we've been looking at quercetin for other reasons as well through this pandemic. Now, just a general comment here. Flavonoids in the plant world are used for pigmentation of the plant. So they are yellow colors. So yellow or blue reddish colors are actually because of flavonoids. That is one use that plants or flowers use them to color themselves. Second, they are antioxidants and they help plant cells as an antioxidants. They're also anti-inflammatory. They're also plants' chemical messengers. They're also antimicrobial. So plants actually use them for a lots of mechanisms. And of course, and these same chemicals are useful for us as well. So here, if you see, the test was, or there was a yearly test given to the participants, 19 parts test, which collectively averaged for a healthy person with healthy cognitive abilities, the test's average score was 0.5. Those with the milder impairment had a score of 0.2. And those who had Alzheimer's, their score was minus 0.5. So now if you imagine a person starting from a healthy state and declining in cognition, they will go from 0.5 to 0.4 to 0.3 and slowly going downwards. And that rate of cognitive decline is reduced by flavonols. So now here is the big one screenshot. So my request to you is today's outcome. Take this screenshot. So I went over their list and put that in a tabular form where we can actually see them all in one go. So in this screenshot, what we have done is I've taken their list of foods that these individuals were taking. That doesn't mean that you have to take these foods. You can actually just look at the other links that I have provided and look at other foods and fruits that contain flavonols, and you can decide what do you like more. In this list, in the studies list, there were foods like kale, beans, spinach, broccoli, and tea. These all have camphorals. And remember, camphorals had the largest impact on reducing the decline. Or let's call it association. They were not able to find the causation. They didn't say that these flavonols caused a reduction. they said there was a clear, statistically significant association to reduction. There could be other reasons. So this was a 7 years long study. So keep that in mind. So here, kale, beans, spinach, broccoli, tea, they have camphoral. Now, kale also have quercetin. Kale also have myricetin, and the fourth one that they were looking for was isoramnitin. So if you see that isoramnitin is not here, but the remaining three are here. So I decided that I will add kale to my food. But you can decide beans, spinach, broccoli, tea. Now, tea also has camphorals, quercetin, and myricetin. Tomatoes have quercetin and myricetin. Now, remember, myricetin and isoramnitin did not have much impact on the global cognitive abilities. So the preference should go to camphorals and quercetins. Another important thing to keep in mind, it is not necessary that you buy these supplements, because there must be other things within the plants that are also helping. So instead of the supplements, if you added the plants and fruits to your diet, that would be helpful. So now here, tomatoes. I made it yellow for a reason. Number one, it does not contain camphorates. It does have quercetin and myricetin, but remember that tomatoes also have histamine. So those who have mast cell activation syndrome, or who have histamine diets that bother them after long COVID or vaccine injuries, they would find tomatoes to be bothersome. So that is why it may be that you don't decide for tomatoes. For isoramnitin, tomato sauce contains that. Then apples. Remember, apple, we have discussed this many times. Apples, especially red apples, they have quercetin. Actually, anything with red skin has quercetin. Onions are very rich in quercetin. Wine has myricetin and isoramnitin, but not quercetin and camphorates. So once again, if you wanted to just have a couple of things added to your diet, camphorates and quercetins had better association with slowdown of cognitive abilities. Then wine, myricetin and isoramnitin. Oranges, myricetin. Pears, isoramnitin. Olive oil, isoramnitin. So what I did was, for me, I wanted to have all these three, the camphorates, quercetin, and myricetin. So there are two products that give me all these three, that is kale and tea. And in addition to that, I want to have isoramnitin, and the products are tomatoes or wine or pears or olive oil. And olive oil is something that we use every day. So that makes me whole. So again, my request to you is, if you can take a screenshot of this, I've put that in a tabular form for your ease. Now, at the bottom, if you see, in this study, what was happening was that people would tell on a yearly basis. They will come in and they'll take the cognition test, and they would also fill out a questionnaire about what kind of foods they eat more regularly. And so that is also a limitation of the study, because people could be recalling incorrectly. But keeping that limitation in mind, the mean intake was 9.6 milligram per day of these flavonols. The group that had lowest flavonol intake was using 5 milligram per day, and the group that had the highest flavonol intake was 15 milligram per day. So they were really comparing highest usage to the lowest usage. So both groups were using flavonols. One group was using less than other, and there was statistically significant difference in the decline. So that association was present even after stratification, even after adjusting for age and sex and physical activities and smoking and all other, and I'll show you that in a second. So that means about 1 cup or 2 cups of flavon or fruits or vegetables that contain flavonoids is good enough for a day. US population on average has 16 to 20 milligram per day of flavonol intake. But that doesn't mean that everyone eats fruits and vegetables. Some eat more, others eat less. As you could see in this study as well, there were multiple groups. That is the, I think this is the only diagram that is interesting in this whole study for an actionable outcome, and that is adding fruits and vegetables. And here are some things that can be. Now, chocolates actually have flavonol instead of flavonol, and so these are also antioxidants and anti-inflammatory, and they're also useful. However, there has not been any serious, statistically important, without much limitation study that can show that with the causality with impact, just like this study is not able to show causality. The other thing is chocolates have monosaturated fats, plus chocolates have sugars. So they have their own issues. Plus, chocolates, because of the sugar intake, if you are, let's say, at a lower sugar level, and then you take chocolate and the sugar peaks, this valleying and peaking of the sugar can trigger migraines. So, chocolates can cause actually migraine. So be careful with chocolates, but chocolates are also good. Now, there is one more important thing, and that is caffeine and the decaffeination reducing flavonoids. That there is no study actually that shows that conclusively. It is just an opinion that has been formed that when decaffeination occurs, the flavonols are removed or destroyed. That has not been proven. Okay, so continuing, some details of this study. So, 6.9 years long prospective cohort study, 961 individuals participated. When they started at their baseline, they did not have any signs of dementia. 75% were females. Average education level was 15 years. Mean baseline age was 81 years. The range was from 60 to 100 years. 42% of the population participating in the study were smokers. 19 tests were annually given, plus they would fill out a validated food frequency questionnaire every year to recall what foods they were taking. And that is a limitation as well. The recall could be wrong. And so, in their foods, what these researchers were looking for was flavonol uses, camphoral uses, quercetin, myricetin, isoramnitin. Now, again, another limitation is that this could be another confounding factor causing it, while we think it may be flavonoids. But still, the data is statistically significant after adjusting. So, let's look at that. So, in their results, they say in continuous models adjusted for age, sex, education, ApoE4, late life cognitive activity, physical activity, smoking, after adjusting for all of them, total flavonol intake was associated with slower decline in global cognition. Beta estimate is this. Then the second part they measured. So, as they had 19 tests, they looked at multiple capabilities. They also looked at episodic memory. Episodic memory is the recall of a past event. For example, remembering a birthday, or remembering your wedding day, or engagement day. So, recalling a past event is called episodic memory. Semantic memory is the knowledge of a fact. So, knowing a fact versus recalling a memory are different kind of brain processes. So they were measuring for episodic memory, they were looking for semantic memory. Then perceptual speed. That is, if a person looks at an environment and does a visual and spatial recognition of things, they can look at things, they can understand where they are, and very quickly figure out the setup. So that would be perceptual speed. They were measuring for that as well. And then they were looking for working memory. Working memory is that when they're testing the person, they'll give them some things, TV, camera, right? And then 5-10 minutes later, they'll ask them for those words that they were taught and see if the working memory was working or not, or they were able to hold for how long. Analysis of individual flavonol constituents demonstrated that intakes of camphoral and quercetin were associated with slower global cognitive decline. So here the global cognitive or cognition was the test's name. So those 19 tests that collectively created a score, they called that as a global cognition score. And also look at this, myricetin and isoramnitin were not associated with global cognition. So once again, camphorals and quercetins are important to keep an eye on. So their conclusion was results suggest dietary intakes of total flavonols and several flavonol constituents may be associated with slower decline in global cognition and multiple cognitive abilities with older age. That is a study. I really love it. And once again, I'm going to close on this screen here, this this one. So you can decide from this list, this is a list from the study, or you can look up flavonoids that contain camphoryls or quercetin, and you can see if they are already part of your diet or if you would like to make them part of your diet. So that is the discussion. Thank you very much for listening in. Once again, if you would like to support this work, there are links in the description. You can get an access to Dr. Bean, or you can use PayPal, or you can buy me a coffee, or you can become part of patrons and support this work. Thank you. And I would see you day after tomorrow, because tomorrow I am appearing with Dr. Paul Merrick on FLCCC side, and I won't have enough time to prepare for the lecture. So with this, please like, subscribe, and share. Actually, comment as well, because that works too. And I'll see you day after tomorrow.